Hey everybody, I'm Jessica Bauer. I'm the owner and founder of Krysset in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, an online shop at Krysset.Shop. And I am joined today by Stephanie Coleman, who is the owner, founder, and artist, as well as retail store owner of Mezari Atelier in Montreal. And the reason that Stephanie is joining me today is because she has created an amazing, beautiful hand-done tea towel for our upcoming Comfort Box release, which is coming at the end of March. So we're gonna do a little interview, find out a little bit more about Stephanie and her business and what she does. So I figure maybe, Stephanie, I should probably let you talk.
Hey, so I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you for joining me. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's super exciting. I'm really honored to be a part of the first Krysset Box. It's awesome. Yeah, and I love what you stand for with supporting makers, designers, because I'm really all about small batch production, printing things by hand as opposed to digitally, and preserving rarefied skills that are, sort of being lost to production that gets moved overseas. Or not that that's always a bad thing, it's just that to keep, just to keep that sort of savoir-faire alive. So
No, I love it. One of my favorite things about having small batch or handmade pieces is that I really feel that there's this personal touch that you're just never going to get when you have something that's like majorly mass produced. You kind of lose a little bit in translation, but when you have something that's so personal to the maker and the designer, I think that you bring that intention home with you, and it's just a much more rich experience, which is one of the reasons that I founded Krysset, was because I wanted to be able to work with people like you who do incredible work. And actually, I should probably show the tea towel before, so everybody can kind of see like one of the things that's going to be in the box and some of your beautiful work. We'll see how this works with the camera, actually pulling it up. Yeah. So when I got this in the mail, I really wanted to actually hang it on my wall instead of actually using it as a tea towel, but I might do both. Because you're just such an incredible illustrator and artist, and I was blown away when you sent me the sketches too, just because you have such a mastery of your skill set in terms of the objects that you're working with and that you're drawing inspiration from and that you're actually rendering out and illustrating out. They're just, and you also have this beautiful line quality to your art that's just, I don't know if you guys can see it in the camera, but just look at the beautiful, can you see it, Stephanie, okay? Because I can't see both.
Yeah, it's so
yeah, so, but if you just look at how lovely the texture is of the lines that you've put into the croissants and the little details of the ribbon, and it's just so gorgeous. You can really kind of feel your pen and your hand coming through in each of those details. So yeah. Oh, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it right there. I love it. Do you usually sketch in pencil, or do you like to work in ink, or do you do a pencil and then ink over it?
Pencil, then ink over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a long relationship with drawing, starting from when I was a kid, with my mom really teaching me how to draw from observation. So that really, I didn't really realize how much time I spent just practicing that throughout my life.
Right.
But I did go to art school. But yeah, I do. But I always work in actually India ink.
Okay.
With dipped in a in a jar, for a few reasons, but but it gives that line, that because I could just draw directly into a digital program, but I choose this specifically because it goes through, when it's transferred into Photoshop and then it's printed out, and then I work with it as a photocopied acetate to make the film. It goes through so many steps that also gives it that dimension.
Right.
That you can't repeat digitally. You just can't. So in some ways it also protects my work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would imagine.
It's so distant. You can't just like rip it. Like it will never turn out the same.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that when you actually, you know, and so you're, we'll talk a little bit in a second about more like the other type of stuff you do. But yeah. I noticed that in your pieces, it's your line quality specifically is very unique. Like if I was to look at something of yours and look against another illustrator, you have a very different textural look to it and feeling. And I'm assuming it's probably coming from that process itself.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it's very long. It's not fast.
It's an artistic process.
Yeah, but you know, but then, you know, once the image is generated, then the main work is done. So
yeah. So how did you end up gravitating towards textiles in general? So for those of you who don't know Stephanie or are new to Krysset or whatnot, you do textiles like tea towels, and you also do textiles that are on paper. So you're doing wallpapers, and also I think you do some occasionally I see a pillow, or I think I saw some pajamas not that long ago, which is
yeah. I'm into exactly. So yeah, wallpaper, textiles, textile design, mostly for home decor. To me, pajamas still fall under home. I've done a bit of scarves and tote bags too. But I think more and more in the future, I'm going to keep pushing more towards like, you know, throw pillows, wallpapers, more that direction. But it's fun to just go off in some directions sometimes too.
Yeah. How did you originally gravitate towards that particular type of work, you know, versus like becoming an illustrator? Because you totally could, I mean, you could still do that as well, but it's not something that you're doing currently that I know of.
Well, it probably comes from art school. I studied in the fibers and textiles program at Concordia, but it was through a fine arts program, so it's certainly more conceptually based. But that's where I really fell in love with traditional French toile wallpapers, which the toile de Juillet, which has really been reinterpreted by a lot of artists with contemporary imagery in it. Definitely not the first person to work with toile. It's definitely like there's lots of wallpaper designers around the world doing it. But I just like, because I really like story. And to me, the toile is kind of like the Shakespeare play of textiles. It's like a structure and a format that people reinterpret over and over again.
Oh, interesting.
So I like that. And when I was a kid, I used to take fairy tales and rewrite them and like change the ending and stuff. And so like the gingerbread man was like one I did when I was 6, and I just like made it so the gingerbread man was scary and like scared everyone away and stuff like that. So like that's just kind of like, I think that's the connection I have. I like to take a very traditional, well-known thing that people recognize instantly. Even if they can't name the toile, they recognize it because it's so ubiquitous. It's hundreds of years old. It's public domain, basically. And then change the story. So yeah, a little like, and it'll look kind of prim and proper at first glance. And then there's going to be a surprise always.
Yeah. And actually that we had talked about this before we jumped and actually started recording our interview, but one of the things that I actually had to sort of discover about your work, and I think we've known each other for about a year and a half, a little bit now. So and when I first saw your work, you know, obviously it's so intricate and it's beautiful and it has this just incredible you know, aesthetic quality to it between the line work and your color choices and your color pieces are just, I always really gravitate towards the way that you match or pair colors together, especially in your wallpapers. But the one thing that I had to kind of discover was actually that surprise element. So it took me a couple times of seeing like one wallpaper has this beautiful floral pattern on it. And then there's these hands that are in there with scissors that are actually cutting the flower buds off of their stems in the wallpaper. And I think I probably had seen your wallpaper 3 or 4 times before I actually noticed that, because it's just so well blended into this design. And when I finally saw it, it was really exciting, because I was like, oh my God, there's actually something else there that I could discover that I hadn't before. So, and you've done that before, that's kind of unexpected element, little twist on the story or twist on traditional in a lot of your patterns, and the way that you work with design elements or interpret, even like for the tea towel, which we can talk about a little bit later. But that, like, what about that? I guess, like, where did that come from to kind of get that twist? Or, you know, is there a statement that you're trying to make, like, with some of those little surprise elements that kind of change the story or change the narrative of those, you know, traditionally lovely type of stuff, like a floral wallpaper?
Yeah. I think part of it is that it just makes me laugh.
It did make me, it was kind of humorous. Yeah.
And then part of it, I think, is also like, I was in fine arts, okay, and I love contemporary art, but I also felt like it was so separated from life and from the real world. And it's not always like this, but there can be sort of like a classism or elitism to the work, or to like just sort of the scene around it.
Right.
Which, again, I don't judge that, but it's just like, I guess I just like to poke holes in things. And like, the reason I started my own space is because I was tired of gatekeepers, and these spaces are often not inclusive of women, people of color, queer, like, you know, it's just, so, I mean, I think that's maybe part of it. And like, I also, I'm from the forest. Like, I grew up super rural, like in like a tiny town, like, and so everything is just funny to me too. Like, I don't know. Because I didn't grow up with wallpaper. I didn't grow up with great architecture. I grew up with like handmade wooden shacks and like steel sheds. So I'm also like amazed by it, but I'm also like, I get to make this and also like screw with it, you know? I don't know.
Well, that is actually a fascinating element about your work. And I come from a traditional fine arts background as well.
That's right, that, yes.
Yeah, and then, so, because I think there is this sort of like, it's not that, I find that there's a hoity-toity section of art world, but then there's also so many things about it that, I feel like it's getting, what's kind of happening, especially in like products that are either, they're coming into your home, not necessarily for a museum wall or for a very like high-end gallery, but I do feel like there's like an accessibleness to handmade products and unique artistically made or creatively made products that maybe didn't exist 30 years ago. Like, it, you know, and that there is like a level of accessibility that has sort of changed over the last like 20 or 30 years. And now that we see that sort of like with the makers movement and stuff more often than we used to. Yeah, and I like that kind of accessibleness about work, because I always felt that art is such a, it's such a powerful statement in so many ways, both the history of it and like the artistic expression and creative expression, that I love seeing it being able to come into our lives a little bit more readily, which is, you know, part of the reason that I love working with, you know, designers and makers and artists like yourself, because I do think that there's this sort of breaking down of barriers, and I'm a huge fan of that and sort of upending things a little bit. So.
When I was in art school, when we were having critiques, if someone called your work decorative, that was a huge, huge insult, right? And I'm over here, I'm like, no, decorative. I am blatantly decorative. I'm maximalist decorative. I'm matchy. I'm like, like, decorate. That is an immersive installation, in my opinion. So.
No, exactly. It's something you can bring up your home, and I really like that about it. So Yeah, and I mean, I love going to a museum, and I love drawing inspiration from old, like the textiles and things that, we'll talk about in a minute, but that you do, and like that very traditional formalized sense of art. I think there's so much there to draw from, but I feel like we've entered a place where we can take it to the next stage. It doesn't have to just go in, a gallery space. It can go in your life too, and become something that's personal to you, enhance your own sense of beautification or comfort or whatever it is. So yeah. Let's see, where were we? God, tangents. That's okay though. All right, so I mean, we have to talk about the tea towel a little bit, because obviously it's going to come into the Comfort Box, which is coming out in the end of March. And it's been so much fun sourcing it, because I've gotten to talk to so many different makers and designers. And but the tea towel for me was actually sort of the jumping point for the rest of the box. So I knew that I wanted to do something around the idea of comfort, and I might change the name to Comfort and Care, but whatever. Similar concept, because I think in the middle of the pandemic, or however, a year in now, or that most people are, and no matter where you are in the world, I think everybody is affected, at least to some extent, that I felt that there was this need to both give and receive comforts in your daily lives. So when I came up with the concept, I reached out to you. I think you were the very first person that I talked to, and you came back with something even more extraordinary than I had kind of thought. It was just so beautiful. Like I said, I just want to hang on a wall. But so I guess I had sort of told you that I wanted to do something around more everyday comforts, not really like luxury comforts, because I think in a time when people are feeling sort of disconnected and not able to kind of do all the normal things that they would do in their lives socially or with family or even with work, that there is that sense of sort of loss of those things, and that bringing in everyday comfort, like having warm cup of coffee or your favorite drink every morning, and having routines. Like mine in the morning is, I swear this is it. I get up, I take my dogs out, I come back in, I don't feed them first. I start the coffee, then I feed them, then I make coffee, I make myself a peanut butter and jelly toast and a hard-boiled egg. And that is almost every morning. And to me, that is such a comforting routine, because I know, and it's a little Groundhog Day, but I think that the cup of coffee with the peanut butter and jelly toast is become something that if I don't have it, I feel like, oh my goodness, I need to eat it for lunch because I miss it for breakfast. Yeah. It's this little moment that I look forward to every single day that I really, really enjoy. So the tea towel for me kind of really hit home, because you have there's like a jam jar on there with the knife, and so, and the idea of the croissants, because frankly, if I could get good croissants, I would probably eat them every day, but I cannot get croissants in Pennsylvania. No, definitely.
That's tragedy.
No, I know.
Hungry now. I want to go get a croissant.
I know. I mean, I live about half an hour north of Philadelphia in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and I'm sure there's probably a bakery nearby that probably does a pretty good croissant or something, but not like in Montreal, where I'm sure that you have plenty of places close by. Yeah. But anyways, talk about your inspiration, like because it was pretty immediate. You got back to me and said, well, I really like to do something with coffee and croissants. And you said like that, there's nothing more comforting about that. So where did you kind of jump off?
Honestly, this idea has been kind of percolating in my brain for at least a year, maybe more.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah. Like I've been meaning to like do this. And but I just kind of didn't stop myself or have the moment. And then when you reached out, I was like, oh my gosh, this would be perfect for, comfort. Yeah. Okay. And, but yeah, wait, did I just answer the question? Inspiration.
Yeah.
So I always look to history, like textile history, because it's a passion of mine, and also because I just find that it adds depth to everything that I do. Like it's a conversation point. It's something, again, like I mentioned, that people just recognize they know it, even though they don't know they know it. So whenever I like, and I feel like it just anchors my ideas, because I have a lot of ideas and they're always like blasting out, and I'm like, okay, but which one and what do I hook it to? Because otherwise it just gets too vague. Like I really need limitations. So I was looking at, I have this book called The Papered Wall, and I should have brought it. It's really pretty. But
I might have a screenshot that you sent me. I'll see if I can find it while you're chatting.
But there's these panels from palaces in France and like manors in England using the French Arabesque, and it's just like a decorative style. They're usually vertical panels about varying heights, and like there's usually molding on either side, and they're sort of into the architecture of the room.
Did find it. Let me share my screen so you guys can see out there.
They're block printed, which is a very laborious process. I'm using screen printing, which is still slow in my opinion, but fast compared to how they were working back then.
Yeah. So this is the inspiration. So when you sent me the sketches, I think, and the original concept, you were drawing from this particular piece, I think, correct?
Yeah. So you'll sort of recognize some of the curlicues in the panel to the right, like where there's some peacocks hanging from a little bow.
Right here.
That sort of, that, and like the sort of curling. And the imagery I used, like the different plants I used, those actual curly guys are coffee Arabica plants. So the little beans or the little berries are actually coffee beans. And the ones at the top that I put next to the croissants, those are wheat, or flour for the croissant. So
we've got then the coffee bean plants are, let me see here. Is that there, correct?
Yeah.
And then you've got your sort of your wheat coming up here closer to croissants. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I threw in some magpies because they're jerks and they like to steal things. So
and he's also holding a spoon.
Yes, so. Exactly. So he's stealing the shiny things.
I love how so to me, it's kind of, I love how you're interpreting things, because to me, when I see the panel and that I saw that this is where you're drawing your inspiration from, and it was, as soon as I saw the panel and saw how the pattern worked together on the tea towel, it was immediate for me. I was like, oh, this is, it totally is reflective of this. And in a million years, I never would have thought to put those two things together. But one of the things that I thought was so brilliant about your design work for this specifically was how you took something that feels very formal and immediately made it accessible, and something that was comforting, and something that was warm and familiar with the way that you interpreted the design and the context of the design, with the croissants and the wheat and, things that we kind of see in our everyday life, a knife with a little jam or butter or peanut butter on it, whatever it is, the little latte art on it that we're all, so familiar with when we go to our favorite coffee shops. Like, those are images that we see regularly, and it took something to me that felt quite formalized, which is that panel that we just took a look at, and made it into something that you could, that it just feels familiar and human, and not like it belongs in a castle. Yeah. Or a very lovely chateau in the French countryside.
And at the same time, I do see it as an invitation for us to really value those banal moments in our lives, and to we can elevate them if we want. Sometimes we're not always doing that, but break out the good linens, use them. And in COVID, sometimes that is like our biggest moment of the day. It's
like I used an actual napkin instead of
Exactly, because life is short, and why not use the beautiful things and not put it off for another day? So so that's sort of another side of it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely an elevation there. It's kind of funny because it's like it's bringing one thing down, not down, but It's
Yeah,
making something accessible, but also making something else feel more important. So it's taking something that we might take for granted every day and kind of elevating that experience. And it's taking something that we might have felt inaccessible or formalized.
that's not for me. Yeah,
Yeah,
or
and bringing it into
yeah.
accessibility, which I really like those two things put together. Um, so what is the rest of, because I know that we talked earlier and you had mentioned that like the tea towel is the first release in what you hope to become like a whole new line for your shop. But as of right now, the tea towel is only available in the Krysset box until springtime sometime. I think you'll start doing things in your shop. So what is the rest of the pieces that you kind of want to do in that same idea?
I'm still working that out, but I actually would like to do some wall panels.
Okay.
Actual, like, just do it up French chateau style.
That would be amazing. I can totally
Yeah.
see a room with something like this on it. It would look incredible.
Yeah. A restaurant and hotel, if those ever exist again. Or someone's home, since that is now our restaurant. So, so yeah, and I think like a table runner could be cool. So yeah, I want to actually extend the pattern, add more.
Yeah, I can definitely see how this would lend itself to just repeating, stacking, and yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No table would be amazing.
Yeah, maybe placemat, maybe throw pillows. I don't know. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I want to jump straight to the wall first, and then go from there.
Yeah, that would be really, really cool. I've seen some of the work that you've done in people's home. Like you show that on your Instagram a lot if you're doing something custom, which maybe right now you might not be doing any of that, but in the past I've seen it, and it's just stunning how it comes together in a space. It's just unbelievable. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I would be super excited to see something like that because I think it's a really unique take on it. I don't think I've seen anybody do that kind of,
No, not in North America.
Yeah.
So I'm really trying to actually go into those zones that people just aren't doing. It's like things are getting more and more digital, which is fine. It's cool, but I'm like, I don't think I can compete with that. So I'm gonna do what I do, and it's slow and whatever, but it's okay.
Slow can be really good though. Sometimes I think it makes it even more special, And I think that's something that when I started Krysset that I also was kind of really interested in exploring was the idea of the limitation of small batch production. So as I continue to, curate themed boxes, which first is going to be the comfort box, and I'm already working on a lavender box, which is going to come out in April, and I have, I think, 12 more or 13 more releases scheduled for the year, is each one of those are going to be super limited because there is this, this is my Greyhound is joining us. There she goes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She's like, are you talking to me?
This is about me, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, when you're a dog, everything's about you, So, but I think there's just something kind of incredibly beautiful about the limitation of small batch production. So, because you can't make, 700 of these or 1,000 of these using the process that you do. And the same thing goes for, like, I'm wearing a pair of earrings that's actually going to go in the box too by Cindy Leibel. Actually, I'm not sure if I pronounced her last name Leibel or Leibel, so I apologize, Cindy, if I'm saying it wrong. But that's going in the box as well. And, the box is going to be limited to 50 units, so there's only going to be 50 available. And once they're gone, they're gone. Maybe eventually I might kind of, bring something else back in its vein, but they may never be exactly the same. Because I think when you have those, small batch and handmade type stuff, and it just adds this, elevates the quality and elevates the experience. It is unique, and you can't just, run this off and have, fit 5,000 of them made, overseas or something like that. Just that you just will not have the same piece of, same product at the end of it. So, yeah.
100%.
So for your process specifically, what I know that you start with sketching, like we talked about beforehand. What comes next after the sketch? Is it like, and then how do you get it actually to the tea towel?
Yeah. So some of it might be a little hard to explain, but actually, on my studio though, I can actually show you props that might help.
Sure. All right, well, that sounds good. I'm up for that.
Sorry, 1 second. Ting, ting, ting. So I started drawing croissants actually like last year.
Really? That's awesome.
Like they're fun to draw. But I'd had this idea kind of, but yeah, so I draw in pencil, then I ink it in with this guy.
Which, for people that don't know, that is it's a wood handle, and then it's a individual, what's called a nib on the end of it, and you're actually dipping it in the well of ink, correct?
Yeah. Into ink. I do that partly, like there are like nice ink pens that you can get and use, but I was doing so much drawing, especially for this one art project a few years ago. I was going through them and it's mad expensive, and like they die, and I'm just like, and then I started discovering this, and it took a while to like figure out, so I'm not like splotching everywhere, and still sometimes there's a splotch and we just go with it, but
they add some character. Yeah. There's a lot of mastery in those. So for anybody that's familiar with calligraphy, that's a similar type pen that's used in, very highly skilled calligraphy. And what happens is that if you push too hard, the ink will kind of like bleh all over the place, but it also gives you the ability to have different line weights with a single piece. So for example, if you ever see a piece like a line that flows from super skinny to a little bit thicker back to skinny again, something like that particular ink nib and whatever whole system will give you that, as opposed to if you're using a marker, it's a little bit harder to get those different line qualities because it's a singular width. You can't make it flow in the same way, I guess.
Yeah. Thanks for explaining that, because I forget that it's not always obvious. I'm just like this. Everybody knows what this and what.
Yeah, exactly. I've been a jeweler for so many years. I was a jeweler for I've been in the industry for forever, and really only kind of just diverged from that about 4 years ago. People they kind of just don't know, like you don't know what you don't know, and sometimes when you're in the process so much, you just forget. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, definitely. I forget. Yeah. So yeah, I really do a lot of drawings, and a lot of them don't make it in. And especially at the beginning, I would just sort of draw on like any old scrap of paper. Like I'm not very precious. I try not to like be too worried about it. That's also an art school thing where they're just like, no, you can't care. Just on to the next. So it's like, just draw. And then I choose the best and photograph them. I used to scan them to bring them into Photoshop, but I found that it's just these days with the iPhone, you can get a really good high-res photo, and it's just like tick, 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 and then 2 seconds. Like it's just faster. So they go into Photoshop. I take away the background, all that, reduce it just to lines, fill it with black. And that's when I'm starting to play. So I move things around. I'm able to.
So you're bringing individual elements in, like, so for example.
So it's all, I don't draw, like it's all just like pieces.
Right, so almost sort of like putting together a puzzle or a pattern with the objects that you've drawn. So if you did a coffee mug, then you're sort of seeing, well, if I repeat it here and here, and then do something here and here, and seeing how that kind of looks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that allows me to kind of not commit right away. And like some textile designers will draw their repeat on paper just as it is. And William Morris, who was like one of my inspirations from the 19th century, that's how he would work. But maybe that's a more pure way to do it, but I like doing this. And sometimes I will actually, if I don't feel like doing that on the computer, I'll print out all the individual elements and then do that
like physically with paper.
Physically, with paper or with these clear, because it gets printed on a clear, this is called a film. And now some screen printers will cringe at mine because it's like taped together. But this is, it's my Frankenstein film, and that's how I work. And this is like the art school side of me, okay? This is like a screen printing shop would be like, what is that? You must not do that. And I'm like, yes, I must. The rest of the world is like, what are you talking about right now? But anyways, so yeah, there's just, I like to just play with it like a puzzle, essentially. And then when it clicks, I don't know, there's just something where it just feels harmonious visually for me, and I work until that point. So I tweak endlessly because like this process is really long to like really get it right. But
yeah,
I feel like I never regret when I really work it to death, because it gives it that extra finish and professionalism that, I try to keep. So, yeah.
I remember there's a quote that I don't know if it's more of a quote or just like it's meme saying that I see float around on the internet occasionally, is that when you're buying a piece of work from a maker or designer or artist, you're not just buying that item, you're buying the hundreds of hours of works, the failures, the this and that's that went behind it. And having, been a painter in the past and also have been a jeweler for so long, I totally see that and can appreciate it, because I think there was a moment when I was a kid that I owe a lot of my creative endeavors and my creative career, I suppose you could say, to my parents, because when I was a kid I was highly creative, and they would always say like, that's amazing, here, draw more, or here's some beads or some clay or whatever it was. And they always really liked what I did and were very supportive of it. But one thing that they used to do is take me to craft shows like when I was young, and my mom still buys tons of handmade stuff and always loves to find handmade stuff. But one of the things they would say is like, we would go to places and they'd be like, oh, you could do that, you could do that, you could do that.
Oh,
Which
I love that.
at one point is like, they have a zero idea of what goes into that, but it also helped instill to me that there was value in the finalized product. And I think in a world where everything is so mass manufactured, I think we kind of lose sight of the idea that, even just something really simple, like I have this bottle of water here, like someone had to think about the little lines that go on it and the way that this is like a little counter for how many you've drank during the day. Someone had to think about those little details, and we're so used to just like getting what we want immediately that we forget that something like your tea towel, your wallpapers or whatnot, that there's hundreds and hundreds of hours of thought, daydreams and sketches and failures and whatever that goes into that process. And I love that about small batch and handmade, that you actually get to have a piece of that. So it's really cool hearing you talk about that in terms of how you arrive at the final thing, because it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah, because I would have never thought, actually, when you told me that you started thinking about this idea like a year ago, and it just happened to be that it matched up really well with what I was talking about, that never would have occurred to me, even though I know that creative process kind of works that way, but most people don't. But it still didn't occur to me that it's been kind of, mulling around up there. So
yeah, it's funny. So many ideas. Like, just talking to a friend about that this morning, it's like I'm actually super frustrated because I'm like, I want to get them all out, and I'm like, which one first? And it's just so hard.
You need some minions in your studio where you just sketch and they just like a piece for you, and you can say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no.
Yeah, and then just like endless funds for like producing the wallpapers and just yeah, it'll happen.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
the other thing that you had in your hand, I think, was a silk screening.
Yeah. So this is the screen. Actually, I don't know if you can see. Oh, you can.
Yeah, actually, you can. You can see really well.
Yeah. So it's basically silkscreen printing works like a giant stencil.
Okay.
Actually, but it's just the way to get this image on here is just more sophisticated, and it uses light and UV light. So
Okay.
behind that wall of boxes, like wood, whatever, is and there you can see a yellow light. That's actually my dark room.
Oh, okay.
So I expose this film back there so I can do my own screens. If I were to outsource this and outsource all the printing I did, like everything I do would be astronomically expensive.
Yeah.
So,
but then the trade-off though is that it's a lot more labor intensive for you, and also a lot more, it reduces the amount that you can actually produce by as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is,
it's hard for me I sometimes fight with that. Like wallpaper, I'm okay with someone else doing it because I'm not really trained on wallpaper. I could be doing fabric yardage myself, like rolls of fabric, but I don't know the wallpaper side because I wasn't fully trained. Like I'm more textiles trained. They're still screen printing it, what I want, because the ink has its own presence on paper.
right.
I'm like on a major tangent right now, but
the difference of the ink on the wallpaper when you're saying you have it screen printed is that you actually get so they layer it, if I'm correct. So like they have the background color of whatever your choice is, and then they're doing one color of the pattern and then a second color with a different, so you have to have multiple trays overlaying every time with each different color. So because you can't mix colors in a single screen print. You have to have different trays that then line up to do the next layer of color. So I feel like we need an entire YouTube video just this.
Yes.
One. Yeah, it's such a long process. But then the trick is, and I've noticed this actually even in your photographs of your wallpaper, is that there is a difference in the light, the reflective quality of each of the different layers of ink compared to the background as well. Yeah.
So it can really give a lot of almost like a 3D effect, or it's like you have different planes. It's like it sits on the surface and then the background recedes and stuff like that. That just like, it just makes it so dynamic,
right?
And provides a limitation too, because you can't do a lot of colors, so you have to be really just intentional about every choice. And I like limitations though, again, like I said, because the idea mill, gotta anchor everything. It's like, otherwise,
yeah. No, well, it kind of brings you back to like sort of a base point, you have that limitation set for yourself, or a specific, like for example, even with the tea towel, you're drawing inspiration specifically from those particular types of 18th century French panels, and not the panel and also of this thing and of that thing and another thing, because then you end up with this sort of a little bit more of a jumble of stuff, whereas you have a very specific focus when you have set that sort of limitation. Oh, there's my dogs.
Yes.
There they go. I knew at some point they were going to get interrupted by them. It's just, at what point? Yeah, exactly. So, it's like we have the two little ones, and they're the ones that run around the house and bark at the FedEx guy and whatever else. And our greyhound is just like, I have no idea what's going on. She just stands there. They're not very effective guard dogs if anybody wants to break into our house. Other than noise. So good. Sorry about that. But all right, so let's see. I know I had a couple more things that I wanted to ask you before we sort of wrap up, but the inspiration for the coffee and the croissants, was what was specific to the tea towel, or was it the idea of breakfast? Or I'm just curious because it is sort of breakfasty kind of theme
Yeah.
that we ended up with, but but also I guess you can have croissants and coffee and jam and whatnot at any time of the day. It could be afternoon.
I guess, yeah, it was definitely, I don't know, it's just kind of exciting, I think, as a pairing.
Sure.
Always. It's continually, and it's like, it feels very French. Um, I don't know. It's just sort of, there was a point when I wanted to start an Instagram for the best croissants in Montreal.
I feel like you could still do that, or like
I feel like I still might. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I was gonna say that, and that could just be you going to cafes and trying croissants and just giving
Yeah.
it a rating. Like,
Like, I'm a croissant critic. Like,
I would back that.
right? So, and yeah, they're not all created equal. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So where do you have a favorite spot in Montreal for like croissants and a coffee or a latte or something? Or an espresso, maybe more appropriately.
Yeah, I would say like just around the neighborhood here,
Mm-hmm.
Dispatch has really, really good croissants, I
Yeah.
have to say. They're crispy and buttery. Same with Ren Garçon, which is like Queen Boy.
Mm-hmm.
They also have wonderful coffee, wonderful croissant. Um, Mamie Clafouti is like another bakery not far from here. They actually sell them frozen and you can take them home and bake them, or
That's
get
a bad
them.
option.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
Um, there's probably more that I'm forgetting right now. Oh yeah, Cafe Neve has really good croissants, and this cookie. Okay, that's not in my thing. Maybe it'll come into my thing, into my design.
You can
Big
have it.
chocolate chip cookie.
Oh, that's my husband's favorite. Like any place, time we go someplace and there's a bakery, if there is a chocolate chip cookie the size of your face, he wants it. Like that's his jam. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, not here, but I lived in Jersey City for I guess we were there for 4 or 5 years, maybe not 5. Can't remember now. At least 4 years. And there is a French bakery in Jersey City that, oh my goodness, now I'm going to blank on the darn name. I'm going to have to think about it. I'll post it in the comments. So think about it. Anyways, but they had the most incredible croissants, and they would have the pain au chocolat and the whole line. And when I was living there, they have a cafe in Hoboken and one in Jersey City. And I would go and get my favorite was the one that was the ham with the cheese in it. And that was like, or the almond.
Oh yeah, that's so good. Yeah.
So good. Now I'm going to have to drive all the way over there to get it, because I don't know if we have anything. Maybe in Philadelphia we might have something.
Right.
But yeah.
Now you're inspired. Time to go.
At any point in time, I'll text you if I end up with a croissant, because it might be somewhat sooner rather than later.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Make sure you
All
send
right.
me your rating of your next one you have.
Oh yeah. That's it. Maybe we could just it doesn't have to be best croissants in Montreal. Maybe anywhere you go, you just go eat croissants, and that is your Instagram or your YouTube channel.
Totally.
Someone out there has got to have done that already. If they haven't, then definitely capitalize.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. All right. So I mean, what's something that you do? Is the croissants, and I mean, that's like a hard everyday thing. But in your everyday life, what's something that you like that makes you feel really comfortable and at ease, especially now, like that other people maybe could do too?
Oh, what do I do? I really like to be warm.
Mm.
So it's like big socks. It's like having a bath. It's so typical. But I wasn't always a bath person. It's like relatively a new thing. Tea at night, also a new thing, actually. Herbal tea. And I like, the placebo effect is real, right? So I actually try to tell myself that my tea is like fixing everything, whether I feel sick or everything. I'm just like, I'm gonna placebo effect that. Like I just like I say it about like I'm just trying to use it on everything. This meal is healing me, or like this is making me happy. I don't know. Like it's a game I play.
I can totally see that. Tea has been a new thing for me during the pandemic too. Not that I never drank it before, but
Yeah, I did, but
yeah, it's definitely it's become more of a ritual thing for me. Like coffee in the morning is like a super ritual for me. Tea in the afternoon or evenings is definitely become more of a ritual. And
yeah.
I'm curious to see because it's right now we're recording this. We're in March and you're in Canada and I'm in north of Philly in Pennsylvania. So it's cold right now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So it's really nice to have that sort of warmth at the end of the day. So I'm curious to see if I end up gravitating towards, even in the summer, still doing the same thing.
Yeah,
I know in the spring I will, but then but I mean, I drink hot coffee in the summer, so maybe I'll still drink hot tea. I don't know. Yeah.
definitely.
Good. Yeah. All right. So you do tons of stuff that is at home. So do you have a tip, or for the home, sorry, not at home, but you do stuff that's for your home, most of the things that you have, actually, pretty much everything. Is there a tip that you have for like using or displaying like the tea towels? Like, especially because they're just stunning. Is there a way that you've seen your customers or that you like to do yourself?
Well, I am definitely someone who sets the table. But I think they're just like on the oven. I mean, that's classic, but
Yeah.
even hanging on a peg looks really nice. And
Mhm.
some of my customers use them in the bathroom because a lot of them go with my wallpaper collections. So they will like wallpaper the powder room and then use actually the towel in there, and your hands tend to be cleaner in there.
Right.
But yeah, I think they can just be nice on display. Some of my customers actually frame them too, so they don't use.
I'm this close to thinking about doing it with the one that I have.
They just frame them. I'm like, all right. I mean, that's a deal on artwork, right? So I think of them as floppy paintings, right? Like that's how when I first started making them, I was like, okay, I'm not really a painter right now, but these are floppy paintings.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I just sort of keep that attitude, like it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, they do have this also this really nice, like, kind of little hook in the
Yes.
here, so you can actually hang it. So it's like, and it has really beautiful folds in it too. I think is part of the sort of attraction of it. And I know you use organic linens, so that the texture is super nice too.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels heavy. It feels good.
Yeah.
And they wash well too. So, I mean, I always encourage people to use them because, they wash, just throw a little stain remover if you need to. And it has its own story too, the stains, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
I don't know. It's like, it's your own addition to it. Just splash.
A couple little coffee stains on this one actually look very appropriate, to be honest.
Especially,
stains.
yeah. Honestly, so.
Well, I always used to say that when I was a jeweler, I mostly did fine jewelry, and people a lot of times they're afraid to wear it. Well, it's funny because there's like two categories of people. One would be people who never wear it because they're afraid of hurting it or whatever. And then there's people who are wearing these very expensive pieces and they're like gardening in them and they're like, I don't understand how come this is destroyed. And you're like, oh my goodness. So it was always two types of people. Is right? That middle one ground was hard to find. But for people who would never wear stuff, I would always tell them, like, listen, it's it's there to be enjoyed. I was like, it enhances your life. It it beautifies your body. It makes you feel beautiful. It can make you feel connected to either a place or a person or someone that you love, and so wear it. So I will I'll be an advocate for the same for your beautiful tea towel, because it will help you feel connected to however however you came upon it, whether it was that you decided to buy it for yourself because you love the Krysset box and everything that was going on in it, or if you were given it as a gift because that was most of the point, is that I wanted people to be able to give and receive comfort with the box. So I'll be an advocate for using the towels.
Using it. Our life is now. So, how we spend our days is how we spend our lives.
Yeah. No, that's actually, I love that. It's good. Yeah. Well, on that note, I will let you go and say thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It was really incredible kind of seeing and hearing behind the scenes of what you do. You're an amazing artist. And for those of you who are watching, you can hopefully, we are releasing the box at the end of March of 2021. And if you would like to follow along and receive 24-hour early access to the box, because as I mentioned, everything that we do is small batch and handmade and all that kind of jazz. So quantities are limited, not because I'm a meanie, but because it's really hard to have somebody like Stephanie make like 500 or something. So it's gonna be limited to 50. You can go to Krysset, that's Krysset.shop to become a VIP, which is a very impactful partner, because Stephanie can't do what she does without people like you, and I can't do what I do without people like you. And people who receive this gift will also be impacted by how beautiful it is and that you thought of them. So you can go and become a VIP and you'll get some early access and free shipping on anything over 75, all that kind of jazz. And hopefully we'll see everybody at the end of March. And if you're watching this afterwards, you can go to Krysset.Shop to find out what we're up to now. All right. Thank you, Stephanie. I really appreciate it.
That's awesome. Take care. Have a really good day. Cheers.